Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a My 2 cent Nintendo/gaming video for this week of November 24th to the 30th, where I take a look at a couple stories that caught my attention and give you my thoughts and my opinions. Before we got started, I just want to wish hope everyone had a happy and safe Thanksgiving, and I also hope those had a safe Black Friday, since this video is being recorded on, well, Friday and all that stuff, and hopefully you were able to get the gift that you want to get for someone for the upcoming holidays and all. So hopefully Black Friday went well with you and all that stuff, and hope that Thanksgiving went well for you guys as well. So we'll get started with the quick My 2 cent part, and the first one we'll start off with is that apparently the game Divinity, if I'm saying the name correctly, Original Sin 2 Definitive Edition is going to get a physical release via by Limited Run Games. Now, supposedly, from what I understand, though, the game was the only way to play the game on the Nintendo Switch was through the Nintendo eShop. So having a physical release, I mean, that's great and all that stuff. Basically, like I said earlier, it's going to be done by Limited Run Games, and from what I remember hearing, pre-orders will go up on December 6th. And seeing that Limited Run has sort of a deal with Best Buy, though, game could also be available to pick up at maybe your local Best Buy and so forth. So we'll have to wait and see when that happens. But right now, from what I understand, physical version's happening. Limited Run Games is printing that physical version, and supposedly pre-orders will happen on December 6th. Another thing we're going to talk about is another quick thing that I mentioned, sorry, tongue twister there, is that an interesting rumor has started to come out in regards of the upcoming Super Mario movie that's being done by, I think, Illuminations and Universal, and that this rumor has to do with the fact that the upcoming movie will be based off of the Super Mario comic strip that ran in the Nintendo Power days. For those who are not familiar, that comic strip was, I remember reading about it though, and I believe there's a graphic novel of it out there as well. It was based off of Super Mario World, second best Mario game out there, at least from my perspective it is though. And it basically, and like I said, it ran during when Nintendo Power was around and all that stuff. It was a very interesting comic to read. I think it's one I would recommend you take a look at. It was also bizarre to see Princess Peach in Luigi's outfit and seeing Luigi in Princess Peach's outfit. That's weird and all that stuff. But either way, right now the rumor is that that's what the movie's going to be based off of that. We don't know if that's true or not, so we'll have to wait and see about that one. And last but not least, we also learned that Devil May Cry 3 is coming to the Nintendo Switch, just like the first and second Devil May Cry games are. It's only going to be available via the Nintendo eShop. There are plans for a physical version, a triple pack, but knowing this is Capcom we're talking about, and given how they handle the Resident Evil triple pack that had Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6, this one is going to be the same thing. It means that the first game will be on the cartridge, but the second and third one are only available via download code only, and from right now, the triple pack is only going to be available in Japan. So it's Capcom being Capcom to the Nintendo Switch, unfortunately. And it kind of amazes me that those games that were back in the early mid 2000s, they can only get that through, they can only put one game on a cartridge and the other two have to be a download, yet somehow a company like CD Projekt Red, along with Saber Interactive, was able to put the entire Witcher 3 experience in a 32-bit gigabyte cartridge and all that, which to me this just makes it sound inexcusable. But again, that's my thought and my opinion about it though. So, but for right now, if you're thinking about getting a physical version though, keep in mind, as of right now, the physical version is only going to be available in Japan, and it's only going to have the first Devil May Cry, while the other two are only available via download code only, should you decide to pick up this triple pack. Alright, with that part of the quick My 2 cent out of the way, we'll get started with our first part of our My 2 cents, and this one has to do with CD Projekt Red. And that has to do with actually two things from them. Witcher 3 for the Nintendo Switch, and their upcoming game Cyberpunk 2077, and something that has to do with the whole multiplayer aspect. So we'll start off with the first one, which is The Witcher 3, which I will be honest with you, I'm still shocked that CD Projekt Red brought this game over to the Nintendo Switch, and I'm still shocked that Saber Interactive was able to get this game running on the Nintendo Switch. What many thought to be an impossible port somehow made it onto the Nintendo Switch. Granted, I mean, I did a review of the game and all that stuff. Granted, it's not 100% perfect, and visually, it's when compared to the PS4, Xbox One, or PC, it's definitely the worst looking version. But it still plays well, it's still enjoyable, and it's definitely worth a pickup. The Witcher 3 in general. Switch version will be based on whether how big of a factor the portability and how big of a factor how much you're willing to tolerate the visuals on the Switch version. Well, apparently it seems as though CD Projekt Red seems to point towards the game The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, the Switch version, seem to have met their expectations, at least according to what CD Projekt Red is saying. In an article on Game Bolt, link will be in the description, you can check it out yourself. It reads that, quote, "When it was announced that The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was coming to the Nintendo Switch, it was pretty surprising. The game, which was a graphical and technical show house, and the Nintendo Switch hardware wasn't quite up to the standard of other home consoles, but it came all the same, and while no one will call it a pretty game, I'll be honest, I don't dispute that it isn't a pretty game, but it ran all the same, and the financials of the game's publisher point to it being a success." CD Projekt Red posted their financial report for third quarter 2019 results, and in it they revealed that the overall revenue was up 38% year over year from 2018. The vice president and the CFO of the company points to the initial shipment of the Switch version as being the contributing factor there. While that's only shipment numbers, not actual sales, in a conference call Q&A after the report, it was said that the port was selling in line with expectations. So if what CD Projekt Red is saying is true, apparently they are very happy with the way The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt did in terms of sales-wise. It's worth pointing out, I believe the October NPD charts did point to, at least on the top 10 Nintendo Switch games, did point to it at, I think, number 4 on that list. So that's certain. I mean, that's good. I mean, I'm glad the game is doing very well on the Nintendo Switch, and hopefully this opens the door to CD Projekt Red bringing other of their games over. Maybe Witcher 1 and maybe a port of the Witcher 1 and 2 game, or maybe, and again, this is a long shot, but it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility, but I'm not ready to make that they are going to do this in any way. I mean, it's certainly, maybe it opens the door to the possibility that perhaps Cyberpunk 2077 could maybe make its way over to the Nintendo Switch. Again, it is a long shot, and even if CD Projekt Red came out the next day saying, hey, we're bringing Cyberpunk 2077 to the Nintendo Switch, odds are it's probably going to be a while before that happens, as the main focus is probably going to be on the PS4 and the Xbox One and PC version, and possibly Google Stadia if it's still around when the game comes out, as those are the versions that they are working on at this time. So even if they do announce that, it's going to be a while though. That said though, glad that Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is doing well on the Nintendo Switch. Hopefully this means CD Projekt Red will support the Nintendo Switch down the road, and hopefully this doesn't come off as nothing more than a one-off kind of situation though. As for Cyberpunk 2077, one of the issues that sort of popped up that some people have some concerns about is basically the upcoming multiplayer part of Cyberpunk 2077. Particularly, there are some reports looking at the fact that CD Projekt Red might be looking at, say, putting microtransactions in the multiplayer aspect of Cyberpunk 2077. And given the recent reputation microtransactions, loot boxes have gotten so far, not everyone's happy about it, especially after we've seen some publishers and developers gotten a little greedy with it. See games like Star Wars Battlefront 2 as a good example of that. And apparently CD Projekt Red has sort of come out about in regards of the whole issue with microtransactions possibly being in Cyberpunk 2077. In an article on GameSpot, it reads that, quote, CD Projekt Red continues to speak about the unannounced Cyberpunk 2077 multiplayer game. As part of an earnings presentation, management confirmed that the game is only in the relative early stages of development and that it will feature some form of microtransaction, though the company isn't ready just yet to confirm specs. According to what one of the managers said, it said, "We believe right now it's definitely too early to share any details on that or give guidance as the project is in relatively early stage," management said about the Cyberpunk multiplayer microtransactions, though. The company added that it's continue experimenting with the Cyberpunk multiplayer game, which is in fact the first multiplayer game made by CD Projekt Red. For the business model specifically, the analyst who asked about it suggests it will be a free-to-play title supported by microtransactions. However, management wasn't ready to say one way or the other. That being said, CD Projekt Red wants to make sure it continues to be a consumer-friendly company as it relates to delivering content that feels valuable to players. The Aulx Studio is known for being relatively generous with its post-release content release. For The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, the studio offered up more than a dozen pieces of free DLC, which honestly I think that's a good thing, and I do think that should set a standard of how DLCs, in my opinion, should be handled. They also said, quote, "We keep experimenting. It's our first multiplayer game. We check different options and possibilities, and it's definitely not the time to point you to a specific direction on that. But you can expect that we won't change our general policy towards deals with gamers. So expect wise monetization and always value for money," the company said. Also in the presentation, CD Projekt Red said that Cyberpunk multiplayer game is a smaller project with smaller staffing compared to the main team working on Cyberpunk's 2077 single-player game. Now, I understand not everyone is happy. Everyone might be a little iffy about the whole microtransactions and so forth, and I can understand that. Like I said earlier, we've seen a lot of developers get greedy with the whole microtransaction situation, and that has turned off a lot of people. So I can understand why some people might be concerned about it, though. That said, I do agree with what other people are saying, and I think it is a little too early to tell and too early to write off the multiplayer part of Cyberpunk 2077 at this time, though. We'll have to probably wait and see what it turns into and how CD Projekt Red approaches it, though. Perhaps maybe the game will be like a free-to-play with microtransaction. Perhaps it's a game where they add a subscription model to it. So it's unclear how they are going to approach it, though. But if they are going to put monetizations into the multiplayer, hopefully they approach the same way they did with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt with its DLCs. Offer free content update and offer paid expansions that are worth the price, though, worth paying for. In other words, bang for your buck and so forth. So whatever direction they go with multiplayer, though, I do hope they handle it in a way that doesn't turn consumers off. I would rather if they don't put monetization on it, but if they are going to put monetization or microtransactions in multiplayer, make sure it's done in a manner that doesn't turn consumers off, though. As regarding the PS5 or Xbox Scarlet version, though, CD Projekt Red also mentioned that, quote, they also mentioned this is from the GameSpot article. It says, quote, "Another hot topic touched on in the presentation was next generation consoles. Management was asked if the company plans to support the upcoming PS5 and Xbox Scarlet in the wake of rumors that Cyberpunk 2077 will come to the system. Of course, we do have insight into what's around the corner and what's happening with PlayStation and Xbox. We're watching it closely," CD Projekt Red says, and one may safely assume that at some point we're going to do something with the next generation consoles. However, we cannot really be very specific what that might be, when exactly that might be. I will only safely assume that it's not going to be around the launch time frame of those consoles. The company went on to say that CD Projekt Red is known for making games that play best on high-end PCs, and in that regard, the company is technically more prepared for the upcoming release of PS5 and Scarlet, which has improved specs. As far as that one goes, about Cyberpunk 2077 coming to PS5 or Xbox Scarlet, I would say, and although there's nothing confirmed at this time, I would say I wouldn't completely rule it out. I do believe that there is a chance that we could see Cyberpunk 2077 make its way to the PS5 and Xbox Scarlet. Obviously, right now they're focusing on the PS4, Xbox One, and of course, obviously the PC version. But I wouldn't bet against the idea of seeing it on the PS5 or the Xbox Scarlet. In fact, I would not be shocked if we hear, oh, it's coming to PS5 and Xbox Scarlet indeed. So I do think that it will, in my view, I think it will probably happen. Again, I could be wrong on that, but I'm more leaning towards that we probably will see Cyberpunk 2077 on PS5 and Xbox Scarlet. So overall, great that Witcher 3 on the Nintendo Switch, at least according to CD Projekt Red, is doing well. Hopefully this opens the door to more games from CD Projekt Red coming to the Nintendo Switch. And obviously it's too early to tell in regards to the multiplayer part for Cyberpunk 2077, how the monetization is going to be handled, or whether it will turn people off, or they do it in a manner that is consumer friendly. And as I said, in regards of Cyberpunk 2077 coming to the PS5 or Xbox Scarlet, while it doesn't sound like anything has been confirmed yet, I wouldn't completely rule it out entirely. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get to part 2, and this one has to do with rumors about possibly 2 Metroid games coming to Nintendo Switch. One being a port of a game, and one possibly being a remake. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our My 2 Cent video for this week. And for this one, we're going to be taking a look at some rumors that have been going around in regards of possibly of one of several projects in regards of Metroid. One being rumored of a trilogy game possibly coming to the Switch this rumor's been around for a while, and the other one's possibly a remake of a certain Metroid game. Now, to me, though, as far as Metroid games go, to me, I didn't really get into the Metroid series until Super Metroid came out, and that became like a favorite entry of mine. Of course, the Metroid Prime Trilogy was also a favorite from Aulx Studio, a different take on it, and the whole first-person adventure, and it still remains a favorite entry of mine, though. In terms of which one is my favorite, I still think the first one is a favorite of mine, although I do like the direction they did with Metroid Prime 2, where they basically had to switch between light and dark energy. And, of course, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, which, while not everyone seems to have liked it, though, I enjoyed it. And I like the fact that you were able to travel to different planets and all that stuff, unlike other entries in the Metroid series where it's basically just stick to one area, whether it's just one planet or a space station like it was in Metroid Fusion and all. So it was very pleased when Nintendo showed off a quick second teaser trailer of that Metroid Prime 4 was in development at 2017 during Nintendo's E3 Direct 2017. Of course, we all learned earlier this year that apparently issues started to emerge with it, and they basically decided to scratch the project, or at least reboot it and start at the beginning again, which now we learn that Aulx Studio is apparently handling Metroid Prime 4. So Nintendo had to do a video and sort of apologize for it, though. And while I appreciate the fact that they apologize, it would have been nice. It would have been better if they had Retro Studio start on Metroid Prime 4 in the first place. But either way, it is what it is. And then, of course, with that, there were rumors going around about Metroid Prime Trilogy coming to the Nintendo Switch. And now, apparently, that rumor has started to pick up again, along with the possibility of a remake of probably another Metroid game. In an article from Gaming Bolt, it reads that, quote, Metroid Prime Trilogy and Super Metroid remake rumored for the Switch. 2 fan favorites are allegedly coming over the next 2 fiscal years. According to the article, it reads, quote, the beginning of this year saw sad news for Metroid fans when it was announced that Metroid Prime 4 development had effectively been scrapped and restarted with Retro Studio at the helm. While a new Metroid Prime helm by Retro makes fans lick their lips, no doubt, it also means we won't see the game for a good while. So are Metroid fans doomed to starve? Well, we're used to it, but if alleged leak is true, maybe there will be something to munch on until Prime 4. Bringing up all that stuff kind of makes... Bringing up the whole munch and lick our lips and all stuff. Yeah, whatever. According to Leaky Panda, there's not just one game planned before Prime 4, but actually 2. They say that over the next 2 fiscal years, Nintendo will finally release an HD version of Metroid Prime Trilogy, as well as a remake of Super Metroid in the style scope of Samus Returns. Obviously, like all leaks, we have to file this under speculation, but Leaky Panda has had some good scoops in the past, though they have also had some duds, to be fair, and Metroid Prime Trilogy at least has been something rumored for well over years. Fingers crossed we're not being taken for a ride, as both titles will make the wait for Metroid Prime 4 a little bit earlier. And according to what Leaky Panda tweeted on that person's Twitter account on November 25th at 1:29 p.m., this person basically said Nintendo is planning 2 new Metroid titles that will release in the next 2 fiscal years respectively, one being a re-release of Metroid Prime Trilogy. The second one is a Super Metroid remake that mimics the Samus Return in style and scope. At least that's what the tweet said. Now, granted, this is just a rumor and there's no official confirmation at this time. So, like what the article said, and like any rumor, obviously you want to take it with an absolute grain of salt. That said, I wouldn't be surprised if this rumor turns out to be true. I think releasing a Metroid Prime Trilogy would make sense for the Nintendo Switch, given the fact that we're probably going to have to wait a while until Metroid Prime 4, till we finally see that game, to be exact. On top of that, though, I think it would be a great opportunity to bring a game like that over to the Nintendo Switch, since the Switch is also reaching new audience who may have never played a Metroid game before, although Super Metroid's available on that whole Super NES games on Switch and all that stuff, but that is what it is. So it does make sense for them to do a Metroid Prime Trilogy and bring that over to the Nintendo Switch, although I'm curious to see how that game would work out, because we know Prime 1 and 2 didn't have motion controls. They added it as part of the Metroid Prime Trilogy, but Prime 3, however, was a game played fully with just motion controls only, with the Wii Remote and Nunchuck. So it would be interesting to see if that game can only be played via motion controls, or if they will basically have it where you, or set it up in a way where it will just allow you to use the controller and so forth. So I'm curious to see how the Metroid Prime Trilogy would work. As far as a re-release of Super Metroid, or a remake of that game in the style of what Metroid Samus Returns that was on the Nintendo 3DS, I would honestly say, while that does sound a little bit far-fetched to some, I'm not really rolling that one out entirely, because when you look at it though, Nintendo did recently release The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, which is a remake of the original 1993 Game Boy, and was also ported over to the Game Boy Color as well. And seeing how well that game did, I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo decides to do something, take a similar approach like that as well. Do a a re-release of of Super Metroid in the style of what Samus Returns was. Now, and again, like I said, it is a rumor, so we'll have to wait and see. So, but overall, I wouldn't be against this. I wouldn't be against a Metroid Prime Trilogy or a Super Metroid remake. Whether it happens or not still remains to be seen. We have to wait until Nintendo gives the official confirmation that these games exist. But I would say I wouldn't be completely shocked to hear that not only that a Metroid Prime Trilogy is coming to the Nintendo Switch, but I wouldn't be surprised that they do a remake of Super Metroid, given how well The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, a remake of the Game Boy game on the Nintendo Switch, did well and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get to part 3, and this one has to do with reports that apparently EA, yes, the company that everyone likes to hate, apparently is happy with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of our My 2 Cent video, and this one has to do with EA and Star Wars, though. Now, ever since EA got the Star Wars license, let's just say the response to it has not exactly been, well, great. We've had situations such as the first Battlefront being a game with little to no content, and then charging outrageously $50 for a season pass with little to no content. Of course, we all saw what happened with Star Wars Battlefront 2 and the whole loot box and microtransaction debacle of a mess and the kind of controversy it received. Not to mention the Reddit post on it was entered the Guinness World Record as the worst, the post that had the most downvoted on it, which obviously not something EA wants. Of course, we've also heard stories about how there was supposed to be a linear Star Wars game from Visceral, and one of the folks, I believe her name was Amy Hemington, I apologize if I'm not saying her name correctly, who worked on the Uncharted series to develop a game, but EA basically pulled the plug on that, basically because they don't believe that people want to play single players or linear games and all that stuff, and refocus it to an open world, to eventually refocus it to mostly a live service, and pretty much shutting down Visceral. Reports about basically EA that Andrew Wilson did not want the Star Wars license or did not know what to do with it, to EA being very unhappy. I meant Disney being very unhappy with EA handling the Star Wars license so far. So it was interesting in I believe 2018 when during EA's press conference, which was barely nothing there, they announced Jedi Fallen Order and all that stuff. And to me, I pretty much ignored it at the time because I thought this was trying to do something or try to turn attention away from Battlefront 2 and all that stuff. Well, the game has come out so far, Jedi Fallen Order, and it seems to have sit well with a lot of people, especially the fact that it's a linear single-player game. Something that many thought that, you know what, wait, wasn't EA against that? Aren't they all for the whole live service and microtransactions? Well, apparently it seems a lot of people were happy about it, and it seems the game may have done well, at least sales-wise. In an article from Destructoid, if I could get it up. Oh, there we go. It reads that, quote, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a damn good Star Wars game. Respawn proved itself a capable steward of Star Wars, demonstrating that a story-driven single-player game has a sizable audience. Jedi Fallen Order got the critical praise right out of the gate, but now it has become a commercial success too. EA boasts about Jedi Fallen Order's success with some oddly vague but super specific sales records. This is the fastest selling digital launch of a Star Wars game in the first 2 weeks. Also, Jedi Fallen Order is EA's top selling Star Wars game on PC during its launch window. I believe it's also available on Steam as well, which is kind of interesting because I thought EA had like the whole EA Origins, but decided to bring it to Steam. I'm sure a lot of people who have Steam are probably pleased with that, though. They're tough statistics to praise, Most obviously, no actual sales numbers were given. As for the digital launch claim, Battlefront and Battlefront 2 are likely Jedi Fallen Order's only competition, as digital distribution becomes completely commonplace across all platforms. Excuse me, and it is a relatively new trend. Also, the top-selling PC tidbits says nothing of performance on consoles. It feels prudent to point out there's no mention of whether the PC sales include downloads from EA Origin Premier subscription, although they probably don't. None of these statistics come with a frame of reference so that we can grudge exactly how impressive they are, but if EA chalks up it as a win, we should chalk it up as a win. Jedi Fallen Order is proof positive that its success doesn't only follow live service games. That's a nice reminder to everyone now and then. Now, I recently decided to pick up Jedi Fallen Order after waiting a bit to see if it turned out to be good, or whether or not EA tried to put their crummy hands on it and put microtransactions in it or something like that. Obviously, that hasn't happened or anything like that, and I decided to take advantage of any deals or anything like that when I picked it up. And honestly, I would say this probably is the best Star Wars game EA has pretty much done. Respawn really did a good job with it so far, based on my time with it though. And I'm glad that the game is doing very well sales-wise, and I do think praise does need to go to Respawn. They obviously know what they're doing. At the same time, while I'm happy that the game is doing well, and I like what Respawn did, I'm also kind of sad about this as well. The thing that makes this whole situation so sad, as much as I'm glad Jedi Fallen Order is doing well, is the fact that it took EA this long to produce a good Star Wars game. That's the saddest part, is that it took them this long. It took controversy with Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 2. They're not knowing what to do with the Star Wars license, the cancellation of another single-player Star Wars game that could have been good but didn't meet their live service, and the fact that the game runs on Unreal Engine 4, for what I remember hearing, and that they could port this over to the Nintendo Switch, or at least have a port house handle it though. But given EA's attitude towards the Nintendo and Switch owners, which is basically a middle finger, or another way of saying they're great partnerships, it's unlikely that could happen. Again, I could be wrong on that, but who knows. And the fact that I feel like this game is nothing more than just a one-off, and that even if this does well, EA will just go back to their old ways and still try to push, that whole live service and all that stuff. So I want to be excited that this is going to just send a signal to EA and all that stuff, that there is an audience for single player games. There is an audience for linear games and all that stuff, but I just don't see that. I just feel like this is nothing more than a one-off, and that EA will just, like I said, go back to doing, pushing their live service BS and all that stuff. And that's the part that makes it sad though. So overall, I'm glad the game is doing very well. I have to say props to EA. I have to dig through the game a little bit more. Hopefully I could do a review on it soon. So I'm glad we finally got a proper good Star Wars game. But the fact that it took this long for EA to put out a good Star Wars game, and the fact that their continued push for live service and so forth, I just feel sad about the situation, that it took them this long, and I feel they won't change at all of this, that they'll treat it as it's just a one-off and just go do what they do best, the whole pissing off consumers and pushing the live service. Again, I could be completely wrong on this, but that's where I stand in regards with Jedi Fallen Order, or with EA with the Star Wars license right now. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get to part 4, and this one has to do with the possibility that Google may have, again, lied about what they promised with Stadia, inclusive of, whole 4K up to 60 frames per second. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 4 of our My Two Cent video, and this one has to do with the whole situation with Google Stadia. Apparently, Stadia has not been in the best of news, and it's obviously something Google does not want. The reviews for it, as we probably have heard, have been, well, mixed at best. While some have had no trouble whatsoever with it, others have pointed to certainly having issues with it in general. Many felt like a lot of the features were missing. The fact that you had to use, I think, the Chromecast, and there have been reports of that overheating. That's not been. And of course, we've heard basically a tweet from Jason Schreier of Kotaku, who made claims, the reports that he's been hearing that Stadia has sold below expectations as well, and has become sort of a flop for basically Google as well. Well, apparently now some more allegations are coming out that, well, Google didn't really deliver on their promise on the whole idea that they would be able to stream it at 4K and so forth. So, and that really has not sat very well with a lot of people. In an article from 9 to 5 Google, which they released also an update from a statement from Google, which I'll get to that in a minute. The statement the original report reads that, quote, "With reviews and now more users starting to jump on Stadia, it becomes apparently quickly that the visual quality of the game isn't up to par with other servers. This could be partially to blame for the streaming nature of the game, but it's been proven already that simply isn't the case." In its review, the Verge, Verge, spoke to Bungie, the developers behind Destiny 2, and confirmed that Stadia's version of the game isn't the same 4K version as is on other platforms. Rather, Destiny 2 on Stadia renders at 1080p and is upscaled to improve the quality. In other words, Destiny 2 could never play in 4K on Stadia. The problem extends to other games too. Red Dead Redemption 2, another big name for the platform, also doesn't play in true 4K. Eurogamer confirmed that the game only renders at 1440p and is then upscaled to 4K on a Chromecast Ultra. The quality is also difference is also very obvious when you look at the game side by side with its 4K version on the Xbox One X. And someone put out a tweet reading and put out several pictures of it. They also put out a tweet saying, quote, "Oh my lord, Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC looks so bad on Stadia. It's obviously no contest comparing the Xbox One X and it's only using 44% of the pixel count. Apparently Stadia is 80% faster than the Xbox One X, and yet it only runs at 1440p at 30 frames per second." In the case of Red Dead Redemption 2, some of the blame is very likely on Rockstar itself, since the PC version of the game which Stadia copy is based on has many issues. However, it's just another example where Google is blatantly lying about the 4K quality games on Stadia. Google's Phil Harrison explicitly said that all games will be running at 4K 60 FPS, but Destiny 2 and Red Dead Redemption 2 simply don't. Rather, they're upscale to meet that. You can read the article itself. There's some more to it as well, but apparently it seems as though the allegation is that Google may have lied about in terms of the games running at 4K at 60 frames per second. Now, Google has released a statement in regards on this, and the article from 9 to 5 Google has been updated though. According to the article, the update, it says Google has since responded to the situation with a further detail about the quality of games on Stadia. A Google spokesman tells us that Stadia streams at 4K 60 frames per second, with developers working behind the scenes to develop the best streaming experience for everyone. Stadia, like other platforms, employs upscales and other methods to achieve the best overall quality, and Google expects that Stadia games will be upgraded over time, pointing to the convenient lack of updates for the end user when those upgrades are available. The statement basically reads, quote, Stadia steams at 4K and 60 FPS, and that includes all aspects of our graphic pipeline from game to screen, GPU, encoder, and Comcast Ultra, all outputting at 4K to 4K TVs with appropriate internet connection. Developers making Stadia games work hard to deliver the best streaming experience for every game. Like you see on all platforms, this includes varieties of techniques to achieve the best overall quality. We give developers the freedom how to achieve the best image quality and frame rate on Stadia, and we are impressed with what they have been able to achieve from day one. We expect many developers can, and in most cases will continue to improve their games on Stadia. And because Stadia lives in our data center, developers are able to innovate quickly when delivering even better experience directly to you without the need of a game patch or download. That's the official comment from Google. Although some people have viewed that comment as basically Google is throwing developers under the bus, though. Either way, I mean, if what 9 to 5 Google is saying is true, it does sound like they did mislead and lie to consumers about the whole idea that you could stream 4K at 60 FPS. I mean, if they were honest about it and say that games can scale, games will range from like maybe 720p up to 4K, maybe I might be a little bit more forgiving on it, but to blatantly said that the games will run at 4K at 60 frames per second, where, like I said, if what Google Stadia says is true, is not true at all, yeah, that is a little misleading, and I can see why some people might be upset to it, and it adds more to the problem with Google, with Stadia in general, and yeah, has not got out of the gate in the best of ways at all. I'm not saying I'm against the idea of Stadia and all that stuff. I can see the potential and all that, but I don't disagree with the fact that Google definitely put the carriage before the horse, rushed this out to meet the holiday deadlines and so forth, and well, they're paying the price for it. And I think for them to lie about playing at 4K at 60 FPS though, which according to what 9 to 5 Google is saying is not true. Yeah, I can see why a lot of people are upset about it. And with Amazon possibly stepping in, we'll see how well they do. And Project xCloud in the beta stage and could be around and eventually make its way out there as well as part of what Microsoft's doing. Google really needs to get their act together and really start fixing the problems with Stadia now, because if they don't, and we're still at the same problem by the time Amazon comes out and Project xCloud comes out and those become successful, I can't see Stadia surviving. I can't. And with the reputation Google has of killing off stuff that don't become a success, I think many people expect that Google will eventually kill off Stadia and so forth. Again, I'll wait and see. We'll have to wait and see if that happens. Maybe Google will prove us wrong and actually promise what they deliver and try to fix the situation. But right now, they're not in a great spot at this moment. And we'll have to see if anything changes by the time the Stadia base, the one where you can stream for free but still have to pay for games, whether that helps the situation or not, or whether or not they've improved Stadia by the time that happens. So overall, another black eye for Google Stadia. It's not in the best place right now, and they really need to get their act together very quickly if they want Stadia to survive. Otherwise, I wouldn't be surprised if they kill it off to the point where it goes into the graveyard of other products that Google has done that seem to have not done very well. Not to mention their trailers on YouTube and so forth. Let's just say it's been getting a lot of downvotes and a lot of criticism towards them, and quite frankly, I'm not in any way surprised by that. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get to our fifth and final part of our My 2 Cent video, and this one has to do with Capcom may have some surprises at the upcoming Jump Festa, if I'm saying the name correctly, in Tokyo. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our fifth and final part of our My Two Cent video for this week. And for this one, we're going to be talking about Capcom. And apparently, rumor has it that they'll show off a couple games at the 2019 Jump, I think Fiesta, if I'm saying the name correctly. I apologize if I'm not, in Tokyo, Japan. Lately, Capcom has kind of been on a roll, both good and bad. The good we've seen so far is that Capcom has done a better job putting out quality titles, to be exact. Mega Man 11 was definitely a good game and all that stuff. Monster Hunter World turned out to be very profitable and be very successful. And of course, the remake of Resident Evil 2 sat very well with a lot of people and did extraordinarily well. So did Devil May Cry 5, despite some controversies that the games had, such as the fact that some of the stuff that you can unlock in the game, like infinite ammo, which I believe you can unlock that if you play the game on a harder difficulty. You can pay to unlock it right away. I mean, controversial at least, but it wasn't enough to turn people away. And a lot of people definitely liked what Capcom did with those games, to be exact. At the same time, while there's no doubt Capcom has been very successful and has put out some good titles, there also have been some decisions, particularly with their support for the Nintendo Switch, has been questionable at best. While great that they brought out over Mega Man 11 and brought games like Dragon Dogma Dark Arisen, which is definitely a good game. I definitely recommend that for the Nintendo Switch. And of course, I think Monster Hunter XX Generation, they've been very iffy about a lot of their support for the Switch, especially with comments ranging from buy Ultra Street Fighter 2 the final challenger so we could support the Nintendo Switch, which that game did very well despite getting mixed reviews from some people, and then Capcom backing off saying, oh no, we didn't mean that or anything like that, to their comments of saying buy Dragon Dogma Dark Arisen so we could bring Devil May Cry 5 over to the Switch or make a sequel even happening, which gave the impression that they were holding those games hostage, especially Devil May Cry 5 for the Switch, if that even existed or anything like that. So for me, Capcom's been kind of mixed. They've definitely have been putting out some good titles, make no mistake, but I have to say, even as a Nintendo fan, their support for the Switch has kind of been questionable at best. Well, apparently it looks like the upcoming Jump Festival Fiesta at 2019 in Tokyo, they may have some unannounced projects to be bringing over. In an article from, if I get this right, an article from We Got This Covered, it reads, quote, according to details obtained by GEMATSU from a reliable source, Capcom will be presented at this year's Jump Fiesta convention in Tokyo with 4 games available to the public. 2 of these games, Mega Man 0 and 0X Collection, which from what I understand that got delayed, and Monster Hunter World Iceborne have already been confirmed, but the remaining pair, according to sources, both have yet to be announced. Inevitably, the secrecy has immediately led up to speculation that the long-rumored Resident Evil 3 Nemesis Reimagined will be the one of the attendees, and what's more, will be playable. As for the likelihood of those hopes being realized, the unconfirmed remake was proposed to be making an appearance at this year's Game Awards on December 13th, so a follow-up hands-on event a week later certainly fits the theoretical timeline. Fingers crossed that's the case. Jump Fiesta takes place next month from December 21st to the 22nd. As far as what these games could be or what the other 2 could be, though, the idea of it being the remake of Resident Evil 3, I certainly wouldn't be surprised, although I wonder how long that was in development, to be exact. I mean, given how well the Resident Evil 2 remake was with a lot of fans and all that, people responded very positively to that, and not to mention it did very well in sales. The idea of a remake of Resident Evil 3 certainly is a given, to be exact. Whether that will be at the Jump Fiesta event, who knows? I mean, other games that Capcom could bring over is perhaps, maybe there are the rumors about the game Deep Down, or if I'm saying that name correctly, there's that. There are also perhaps maybe a collection or remake or possibly a new entry in maybe the Breath of Fire series or Strider or maybe Power Stone or maybe maybe like another Final Fight would be nice, not Streetwise. Perhaps bringing back Maximo, Ghosts of Glories, or Ghouls and Goblins, or for fighting game fans, maybe another entry of maybe a remake or an entry of, say, Darkstalker, if I'm saying the name correctly, or Rival School. So there are a lot of titles Capcom could announce at this event that they could surprise us with and all that stuff. So it will be very interesting to hear whether or not, if it's the rumored Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, or whether or not it's any of the titles I mentioned, or it could be something brand new, since the event, if I'm reading this correctly, is not until the 21st and 22nd. There's probably going to be a lot of speculation. As for whether or not any of these games are suggested or rumors will make its way over to the Nintendo Switch, part of me wants it to come to the Nintendo Switch, but at the same time, I feel as though given Capcom's response to the Switch and their so-called support for the Switch as of lately, I have my doubts. Again, I could be wrong, and they may surprise us and may say, hey, we're bringing it to the Switch as well, but I seriously have my doubts. As for what game I would like for them to announce, honestly, if I had it my way though, obviously the Resident Evil 3 remake would definitely be nice, but I would definitely be open if they were to say, hey, we're remaking or bringing back, saying, Ghouls and Goblins, or the Maximo series, or Breath of the Wild, to be exact. So, or say like finally maybe doing a remake of Mega Man Legends 1 and 2 and possibly doing a Mega Man Legends 3. I think that would be nice if they do something like that. So there's a lot of things, if I had it my way, I would like to hear them announce at Jump Fiesta 2019, but we'll find out on December 21st and 22nd to see what those other two games may end up to be. So overall, it's very interesting, and I'll be keeping an eye on exactly what those two games might be. But like I said, as far as possibly any of them coming to the Switch, like I said, I would love to see it come to this Nintendo Switch, but given Capcom's Switch for the support so far, I have my doubts. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about with CD Projekt Red in regards of, say, Cyberpunk 2077 and Witcher 3 on the Nintendo Switch? Are you pleased that that Witcher 3 on the Nintendo Switch is doing very well? Do you think this will open the door for CD Projekt Red to bring other games of theirs over to the Nintendo Switch, or do you feel this is nothing more than a one-off? What are your thoughts about the possibility that microtransactions could be coming to the multiplayer part of Cyberpunk 2077? Is this a concern in any way? Are you concerned that CD Projekt Red will get a little bit greedy, or do you feel like they could handle it the way they handled the DLC situation with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt? What are your thoughts about the rumors about Metroid Prime Trilogy coming to the Switch and a remake of Super Metroid coming to the Nintendo Switch? Will you be happy if those games came to the Nintendo Switch? Do you think there will be any changes to it? Do you think the Super Metroid game remake could happen, given how well the remake of Link's Awakening did on the Nintendo Switch? What are your thoughts about EA being happy with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order doing well? Are you pleased that the game is doing very well? Are you enjoying the game? Did you pick it up? And do you think this could convince EA to maybe focus more on single-player games or narrowly driven single-player games? Or do you feel this is a one-off and this is nothing more than EA will just go back to pushing the whole live service BS? What do you think about the situation with Stadia Google lying about Stadia running 4K at 60 frames per second, though? Do you think some people are blowing it way out of proportion, or do you think people have a right to be angry and feel that Google lied in any way? And what are your thoughts about Google responding to what 9 to 5 Google wrote? Do you think they are right with what they said, or do you feel like their comment basically was throwing developers under the bus? And what are your thoughts about what Capcom could be showing at Jump Fiesta 2019? Are you looking curious to see what they announced at that event, though? Do you think the game could be the rumored remake of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis? Or do you think there may be another game they could be working on? Do you think there's any chance any of these games could come to the Nintendo Switch? Or do you feel like it's highly unlikely that will happen? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think, and I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it if you do, and I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Excuse me. If you do, make sure to hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video, and I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that will be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!